Welcome, everyone. My name is Melissa Jones. I'm a Worldwide Education Program Manager for Adobe. I work here at the Adobe offices in San Francisco. A few other guests with me today from Adobe and from Certifying we'll introduce later. But wanted to welcome you here to our session today where we're going to be talking about how we certify creativity for our youth and our young people. In order to get started, I wanted to just do a quick activity to get an idea of who's in the room and what we bring to the table. So for this activity, I just need everyone to stand up, and we're going to form as much of a circle as we can in the center here. We need to scoot tables, we can scoot tables. It might be more of an oblong oval, but we'll make it work. Here, maybe I'll slide this one out just a little bit if that's okay with you. Maybe you'll slide this out. Okay. Great, this should work. Would you like to join us? Yes. Thank you, Rod. Why don't you join us?
I'm a witness.
No, you have to be part of Michelle. Oh, I guess, okay. Yeah, there's nothing that we need to do with the computer. And for those of you who are following along on the session online, I apologize you won't be able to see, but please participate on your own. Just take note of the activity. No, seriously, Rod. We need you. Come, Rod, join us.
Okay.
Rod! Oh, we have a few more people, so let's slide this one a little bit out of the way so you can get the figures. Please join us. All right, I'm going to start bailing.
I want to know when we're going to start singing.
It'll be very soon. Very soon. Please join us in the circle, and then we'll get you your materials in a second. If you have your sunglasses, feel free to wear them. For this activity, it's not required. If you don't have your sunglasses yet, you'll get them in a moment. So can you do this way, Jeff? Make sure everyone has a spot. Okay, great. So as I said, this session is all about creativity and certifying creativity for your students. So I wanted to start by getting to know all of you and what you're bringing to the session in terms of creativity. So this activity is called Step In. And how it's going to work is I'm going to read a series of statements. And if that statement is true for you, you're just going to take a step into a circle. Okay? There are no little half steppies, right? There's no stepping back. You're either stepping in because it's true or you're not because it's not true. Okay? And then after you step in or not, look around and see who else has moved. And then you'll just return to your spot and we'll go through all the statements in that way. Are there any questions about the activity?
Do we cross the table or cross the...
Not yet. It's just a step in, and then a notice, and a step back. It's an observational activity. And then at the end, we'll debrief and talk about what we observed. Okay? So, what I'd like for all of you to do, please, is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, deep cleansing breath, sing kumbaya, no, just kidding. And put yourself back in time to your life before you started school. So, the earliest memories you can remember, being a kid at home before kindergarten, your earliest memories. Okay? Now, in that mindset, thinking about that time in your life, go ahead and open your eyes. And I'd like to invite you to step into the circle. If at that time of your life you'd like to draw, paint, sing, dance, play make-believe, do some sort of creative activity as a kid. Step in if that's your okay, just notice, and then step back. And you're going to get a little okay, same time period in your life. Please step in if there was someone in your life who supported you or encouraged you to be creative at that time before school. Okay, step back. So we're noticing. Right? Okay. Please step into the circle if you had a hero, either a real-life person or a fictional character, who was creative or used creative thinking to solve problems. Step in. Okay, step back. Great. Now we're going to close our eyes again and take a deep cleansing breath. We're moving forward in time. Now I want you to put yourself back in your school days, whether that's kindergarten through 12th grade, higher ed, your time as a student. Okay. Once you're there, go ahead and open your eyes. And this time I'm going to ask you to step in if while you were in school, you got to be creative or you felt like you got to be creative at school. Step back. Go ahead and observe who's moving. Okay? Step into the circle if while you were in school you got to take electives. Art, dance, music. Step back.
You're dancing.
You can join us. Please join us. Okay, step into the circle if while you were in school you got to be creative in your subject matter classes like math, science, English. Interesting, right? Step back. Catch up, please. Step into the circle is while you were in school, you were taught how to use technology to be more creative. Step into the circle if you had a teacher or other adult at school who encouraged or supported your creativity. And step into the circle if while you were in school, you believe that creativity and creative thinking would be important to you in your adult life. All right, one more time I'm going to ask you to go ahead and close your eyes. One last deep cleansing breath. Let's just be ourselves today, who we are. Let's put ourselves back into today. Go ahead and open your eyes. And step into the circle if creativity and creative thinking really are important to you today in your adult life and in your career. Step into the circle if creative thinking is valued at your workplace. Step back. Step in the circle if you get to be creative every day at your job. Not my choice. Step back. Step in the circle if you get to be creative outside of work in your personal life. Step back. Step into the circle if you believe that you're a creative person. Step back. Okay, a couple more. These are more about your fundamental beliefs about creativity. So step into the circle if you believe that creativity is something you're born with. Yeah. You see where I'm going. You see the future. Step in the circle if you believe creativity can be taught or developed. Step back. And step in the circle if you wish you had more ability or opportunity to be creative in your daily life. All right, so let's talk about that experience. And for those of you who are following along online, I apologize that you couldn't be part of the activity, but hopefully you had some time to reflect on your own. So what are some things that we noticed throughout the course of stepping in and stepping back? What came up for you?
Somewhat based on age when we're in the lower grades.
Is that right? Why do you think that is?
Because we have a lot more technology now than when I was young.
Oftentimes people talk about how teaching and learning has changed too over the years, different emphases.
We've become more entertainers than educators.
I like that educator.
The stage thing is kind of gone.
Yeah.
It's not going to move the needle much, but I was shocked that everyone stepped in when you were talking about being creative and drawing and all that. When I was young, I was thinking about running outside, riding bikes, playing ball, falling down, climbing trees, that kind of stuff.
Creativity falling down, Rob, or?
Falling down.
Yeah.
I was pretty creative going outside and getting mud and weeds and making good pies, making things out of boxes.
Were you pretending to be racing your bike or something, or racing the land?
You know, rattle can slaves and stingrays.
Trying to talk about K-12, the number of people who have been in the circle saying that, technology, or that they got to be creative in K-12, because I think back when I was in school, it was what?
And I did at this time, sometimes when I do this activity, I call out K-12 versus higher ed. A lot of times you'll see a drop-off, people getting to be creative in high school and elementary and middle school, but then when they get to college, there's a sense of buckle down, study for your career, get out, get ready, and the creativity piece goes away.
I felt like I had to be more creative as I worked my way up.
Yeah, depending on your major.
Depends on the major.
For sure. And what about as we started talking about our jobs and what we're doing today as opposed to our education? What did you notice there?
A lot of creativity sometimes comes outside of the job in personal time and through hobbies.
I think workplaces are more open to creativity and expecting it more than used to. That's quite a little I'm doing it right now, but I enjoy what I do anyway.
It's interesting about maybe our perception of what entails creative actions are when we're in the workplace as opposed to like when we're younger, but we think of what we do as being creative.
And it was interesting, you mentioned being creative because you have to, right? Talk a little bit about what you meant by that.
Based on the fact that we have limited resources and expecting more from little that we do have. So we try try and encourage faculty and each other to be creative in how we do our jobs.
I remember when I was in ed school reading an article about creative maladjustment too. You should read that back in the day. It's the idea that you know, the rules come down from on high, and you figure out which ones you're going to work with and which ones you're going to creatively maladjust to. So I think as educators we do have a sense of, well, we're creative because we're figuring out ways to solve problems as opposed to we're drawing pictures. Or
Right.
So back to that idea of creativity is defined in many different ways for us. Yeah. Coming up with ways to educate our students creatively every year after year after year.
I was shocked that a few of you think that you were born with creativity, and I'm also sad because I think that young people can be inspired to be truly creative.
Well, I think that one brought up a debate for some of us, because I think some of us interpreted it as you're either creative or you're not, and that's how you're born. For others of us, I think we're thinking everyone's born with it, and some of us it's stomped on, and some of us it's brought up. But I noticed that almost everyone had an adult, whether it was a teacher or someone in your personal life, who supported you. A lot of us had heroes or people we looked up to who were creative too, but some of us didn't, so that was interesting. But I don't know if you've seen that Sir Ken Robinson speech with the drawing about how schools can kind of stomp out creativity.
My perspective there was because I grew up in a pure left-brain, right-brain family. Well, my mom and I are artists. My dad and my brother are engineers. Colorblind, we're color crazy. So
I'm in a similar situation. My husband's an engineer, but I would say that he's incredibly creative in terms of problem solving. He can think outside the box in ways that I can't, but he couldn't decorate the living room. So it comes back to how you think about creativity and how you identify as a creative person.
There's also a little bit when people were asked about being creative in other subject areas. There were fewer people that stepped in at that moment, because I think, you know, at least for some, I thought, oh yeah, no, I didn't feel like as much creative energy in those other classes. But
my area of creativity is completely non-traditional.
Right. Yeah. Great. Well, I want to thank you all for participating. We're going to go back to our seats. Thank you so much. So at Adobe, we're really, really interested in creativity and what it means and why it matters, specifically in education. And recently we conducted a study of 1,000 college-educated adults who are currently working in any industry, cross-industry. And the results of the survey were really enlightening for us at Adobe. What we learned is that 71% of college-educated professionals think that creative thinking should be taught. It's just as important as math or science. So the idea that the majority of people believe that your creative talents can be developed if you're taught the skills for thinking creatively. And interestingly, these same adults said that math and science were just as important subject areas in which to think creatively as the traditional artistic subjects of drama and art. In the same survey, we looked at specifically people who were education majors who were working in education. And of those people, 68% said that creativity is something that you're born with and that can be developed through school. 75% thought that creativity was important in school. These are education majors, educators. 86% said creativity was important in their career, but only 48% believed that they were allowed to be creative in their jobs today, in their careers today. So that says a lot about how teachers feel empowered to be or not be creative. And this is going back to the larger pool of adults, so the whole 1,000 pool of adults, 78% said that creativity is very important to their career. That's similar to us. We all stepped in pretty much on that one. But only 57% thought that that was true when they were in college. They didn't necessarily think when they were preparing for their careers that creativity would be as important as it was. 85% of these adults agreed that creative thinking is critical for problem solving in their career. But 32% don't feel comfortable thinking creatively in their career, and 78% wish they had more creative ability. So what this research and other research on creativity says to us at Adobe is that there is an imperative, there is a change that we need to see in the education system, where we need to change people's mindsets from thinking of creativity as an elective that some people get access to, that some students get to spend time on, and instead think of creativity as an imperative, something that every young person in this country and worldwide should learn and be able to do and practice every day in their schooling, because it's going to prepare them for success in their careers. This is a big goal. This is a big, huge idea about changing education that Adobe can't do alone. But what we're really looking to do is to take a leadership role in fomenting and creating this change in the educational system. And the way that we're going to do that is by equipping students, educators, and institutions to unleash their creativity through our products, our professional development, our curriculum and certification, and our community. So what I want to talk to you specifically today about is how we move to this idea of getting more young people not only experience with being creative, but how do we help them demonstrate their mastery of creative thinking in order to move them forward on their career and college plan. So I'd love to introduce Jeff Larson right now. Jeff is one of our Adobe education leaders. He comes to us from Balboa High School. He's also the ICT pathway coordinator at San Francisco Unified School District. And Jeff has been on his own personal journey to unleash his creativity and the creativity of his students. He's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Really thankful to be here and be able to speak to you. Earlier this summer, I had an opportunity to speak at a conference. And again, the theme about creativity was being highlighted. The keynote speaker had been Sir Ken Robinson. And the fact that people in IT and industry and education were talking about the role and value of creativity was very heartening to me. I'm an arts educator of 15 years. I've been teaching in San Francisco for the last 15 years. My background was fine arts. So very quickly in my trajectory as an arts teacher, I found myself drawn to the tools that I started to see around me. And one of the first things that I kind of worked with was Photoshop, and I started doing Photoshop with kids in the classroom. There was a lab that wasn't getting much use, and it had Photoshop, and it had some Flash in there, and it was largely going unused and untapped. And so I'd bring the kids down, and we'd focus on graphic design. And we do poster design, and we do public service announcements, and just kind of like, hey kids, like this is one way, these skills that I'm trying to teach you. I'm not saying all of my students were going to be artists, but trying to get them to think about, well, you're all going to have to communicate. You're all going to have to share information. And that part of the visual thinking and strategy being creative is about communicating to your audience. And so we did that, and that was kind of like, I was just learning Photoshop on my own, trying to figure it out. There weren't very many tutorials up and available. But as I kind of grew to like that, and I could see the kids' positive response to it, the fun they were having doing the projects we were doing, I got more interested in it, and I kind of tapped into a lifelong love of animation and began to learn more about the field of animation, the technical process, and the creative process behind that, and implemented the animation program at my high school as part of the Career Tech Ed program there. The things that I've learned over the years have introduced me to a wide range of tools. Through animation, I've learned video editing, I've learned graphics creation, I've learned audio editing, I've started to learn about programming and interactivity. As sort of an inroads, my students are now also seeing these tools as a way to enter into technology. Part of my conversation actually has been with MPICT over this last 6 months or so is looking at the different ways that people come into technology. And on one hand, we have the programming side of things, and then we've kind of got the graphic visual side, and that very clearly they intersect. The face of the computer, what we work with is user interface. It's design, and it's programmers working with the visual thinkers and the designers putting things together that is crucial. And so I'm hoping that my doorway for kids brings them into working with technology in an interesting fashion. You can go to the next slide. So just my own personal experience and what I've learned and been able to create and try out in the classroom is over time we've worked with animation, using them for shorts, informational graphics, commercials. We utilize graphic design when we create business plans and product designs, and do communications for like school publications, posters. Video production is a huge element of communication, broadcasting in-house to the school, and creating fiction and nonfiction stories, or filming and doing demonstrations in different classes, lab setups. Have the opportunity to apply some of the skill sets to app development, like working with Technovation's girls program. They were designing apps, science apps, and they were doing the layouts and the interface and creating the graphic assets for prototypes of Android apps. I've worked with e-portfolios, using that as a qualitative informative assessment tool, and using that as a way for students to kind of measure and capture their work and give teachers and educators a chance to to give feedback to their students. This year I'm implementing for the first time a digital publishing project, and so using tablet device and Adobe applications, we're creating the graphics and the assets to do publications based on the projects that they're working on. And actually this year is also the first year of implementing a 3D modeling and 3D printing program. And so all of this is just what I've kind of hashed out over the last 10 years of work, with me playing with the tools. It's me being inspired by the tools and then trying to pass that out to my students. One of the things that I think is really important is that these tools need to be more broadly brought to educators in general, at all levels. I mean, I think there's probably, we want to limit exposure and screen time for young people, but at a certain point, they need to have an opportunity to play with these tools beyond, doing PowerPoint presentations and just learning to kind of, surf the web. They need to be creating and making things. But I think educators need the opportunity to learn those tools, and then in any subject area, I could see these specific skill sets being applied in different areas. So part of my vision of being a creative person is trying to help other people understand how you could use this in a science class, how you could do something in a math class, and that these tools will actually help and engage the students and yourself in an ongoing process of creative discovery. I'm going to wrap up my part by showing you a video that, again, this was in probably about 7 years' time of working and learning stuff, mostly on my own, but through a series of small workshops and development. Students who produced a video. There's a combination of live action and animation about the role of creativity and the way we sell short the work of artists and designers, and that creative work is all around us if we take the time to look for it and see it.
Yes.
Hey Anna, what are you going to be majoring in college? Probably graphic design. Really? Isn't that just drawing? That won't get you any money. No, actually a lot of things use elements of art and design, like products and advertisements, things. What is that?
I think she's going to talk a little bit more about some other resources, but definitely a big help for me as an educator was some of the resources available through like Adobe Youth Voices and the Adobe Education Exchange. But again, this is kind of a work in progress, and this is, you know, could show you a lot of other stuff that we've done, but that was kind of the fun one.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'll have some time at the end for questions with Jeff and with our other presenters today, so please keep note of things that you'd like to ask him. But what inspiring work, and what an amazing gift that he has given to his students, that they've had the opportunity to not only learn the tools, but to start thinking of themselves as artists, whether they're going into a traditional art career or some other career where creative thinking is asked for. And what I wanted to do just quickly is to talk a little bit about some of the research behind this idea that creativity is going to help students on their career and college paths. In my previous role, I used to work for an organization called College Summit, which helps low-income students make the connection between high school to post-secondary education. And we talked a lot in that work about the difference between college, which a lot of us think of as this leafy campus, 4-year Harvard kind of thing, and the idea of a post-secondary path for every person, which may or may not include college. And some of the research that is important to be aware of when you're talking to young people about their post-secondary path is these ideas of why college matters, why career readiness matters. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here as educators. You guys are all aware of this. But I thought some of these citations might be interesting to you, and I'm happy to share this deck, or this will be recorded, I guess, so you can get the citations later. But one thing that I always try to make clear to students is that post-secondary education and post-secondary attainment changes lives. Regardless of how many years of college or how many certifications you have, it's going to change your life just taking that first step. So if you talk to students about the financials, it's really easy to see that the more education you accrue, the more your earning potential increases. And of course, in today's economy, you're not necessarily guaranteed a job just because you go to college, but your potential of earning over your lifetime is just skyrockets with the more education you attain. The post-secondary attainment also changes families and changes communities. We know that life expectancies are higher for people who pursue post-secondary education. We know that children of college-educated parents are more likely to graduate from high school and continue on to college themselves, and they're more likely to have higher cognitive development. And we know that daughters of college-educated mothers are considerably less likely to become teen parents. Again, post-secondary educational attainment is changing entire communities because we know that people with a bachelor's degree are more likely to be employed and have higher wage jobs. Not a guarantee, but more likely. They report increased job satisfaction, are more likely to volunteer for youth, civic, and other organizations, and are more likely to read books at home. Another reason why it's really important to talk to young people about career and college readiness is this idea that the career and the job market that they're entering, 21st century careers, require more skills than the sorts of careers that people may have been going into 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Technology companies like Adobe, all of the technology companies you've been hearing from this week, are able to hire skilled labor at a distance much more affordably than we are here. And we've talked a little bit about the gaps of people coming out of the educational system here in the Bay Area and not necessarily getting jobs at tech companies here in the Bay Area. So this is a real pressing need that we need to talk to our youth about. Automation is taking away this idea that there are jobs for people who have limited or no education. And then finally, if we want to be competitive, America has to increase its capacity to produce the next generation of creative thinking individuals who can take these higher skilled jobs. This is just another slide that talks a little bit about your earning income over life, the more post-secondary education you've attained. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was the importance in the research of helping students to connect the dots between what they're learning in school and what they want to do after they leave school. We have lots of research to show that when students connect the dots between their coursework in high school and their coursework in college to their career after education, they're more likely to stay in and to complete. And this may be a site that you guys are already aware of, but I really like this completionmatters.org site, which has tons of information and statistics about what it is that we can do as an educational community to help students both get into post-secondary education and then to complete their degree, whether it's a certificate, a 2-year, a 4-year, a master's, a bachelor's. So we know that students need to be creative, students need to get on a post-secondary path, and what I wanted to talk about a little bit is why Adobe cares about that and what we're trying to do to support that change in the work that you're all doing. So one thing that Adobe takes a look at a lot are the kinds of jobs out there in the industry that require knowledge of our software. So there's a traditional set of jobs like a journalist or a graphic designer or maybe a filmmaker where you know that you're going to need to know some Adobe products, whether it's Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, InDesign. These are the traditional jobs that you think of when you think of a creative profession. And those jobs have stayed pretty steady. The growth for them has been pretty generally steady and flat. If you do a search on any job posting board, you'll see that there are thousands and thousands of these kinds of jobs out there. So there's always a demand in the industry for knowledge of our software. But something that's really interesting that's happening right now is this huge jump in jobs for social, mobile, and collaborative technologies. So there's tons and tons more jobs today or a year ago than there were 5 years ago for things like HTML5 or mobile app development. And this is really interesting to us here at Adobe. There was a recent study done of startup entrepreneurs that asked them what are the software knowledge and software that you look for when you're starting a company or that are going to help you be successful in starting your company. And Adobe was on all of their lists, whether they were looking for visual design, web design, or photo editing software. Additionally, U.S. News & World Report stated last year that there are 5 skills that everyone needs on their resume, and knowledge of Adobe Creative Suite is one of the 5. So we know that regardless of whether you're going into a traditional career, a more cutting-edge career in app development, or any career as an entrepreneur or in an office place, knowledge of our software is important. How do we help students gain expertise with our software and then demonstrate that they have that expertise? We have our Adobe Certified Associate program. This is our certification program. So the ACA is an industry-recognized entry-level credential that validates basic skills with Adobe products. It's available in 4 products right now. We have Premiere, Photoshop, Flash, and Dreamweaver. We're also potentially adding a few more exams this year, so you can be on the lookout for additional products that your students can get expertise with. We have free and low-cost exam prep courseware available on the web, and then there's also tons of courseware out there for purchase. Adobe has year-long curricula for the exams that you can download for free today on our website. And then we also have a whole partner network ecosystem of people who are creating other kinds of curriculum, short snippets, CDs, student-facing materials. And then the third piece of the ACA that I like to talk about is this optional stack-on certificate that you can receive as an educator. So once you take the ACA and pass the exam, you just submit documentation that you are in fact an educator, and you get this extra certification that shows that you not only know the software, but you know how to teach it. And both Jeff and I are Adobe Certified Associate. So we're excited to share that. So here's how the ACA works. A young person like this gentleman here, let's call him Billy. Imagine that he's a high school junior, and Billy really loves old movies. He dreams of a career in Hollywood someday. Billy can use Premiere in his class to make a video, maybe with a great teacher like Jeff who's teaching him how to do that. And at the end of his coursework, he can take the ACA exam and earn his certification, which he can then put on his resume, in his digital portfolio. He can take with him on his career pathway. This is helping him connect the dots between his coursework, his interests, and where he wants to go in the future, hopefully compelling him to stay in school, to stay with his educational path. So as I said, there are tons of resources for Billy to use to take the test and to prepare for it, and they're available on our website. I'll give you the URL at the end. He actually earns a certificate that he can put on his wall with his name on it that shows who he is. And he earns access to a digital badge as well, the ACA badge, that he can then use on all of his digital transcripts and his website and his digital portfolio. As I mentioned, ACA is not just for students, so let's imagine this is Mr. Thompson. He's a CTE teacher, and he's passionate about media literacy. In his spare time, he's writing an iPhone app just because he wants to learn it. Mr. Thompson can go ahead and use Flash to write that iPhone app and use the skills that he's developed to earn his ACA in Flash and then stack on educator certificates. And now he has 2 badges that he can take with him on his career path to demonstrate what he knows and what he's able to do. So to date, we've awarded about 185,000 ACA certificates worldwide. It's a huge number. We're really excited about it. The program has grown solidly since 2008, and you can see that our most popular exam is Photoshop with 97,000 certificates. I believe these numbers were from November, with Flash, Dreamweaver, and Premiere coming after that. As I said, it's a worldwide program. The vast majority of certificates are delivered here in the United States, but we also have a good number in Asia and South America as well. And this just shows where the testing centers are. And we can talk a little bit more about how you can become a testing center and where your local testing centers are here later at the end of the presentation. So one thing that's really exciting for us that we're excited to be able to talk about is a study we recently conducted in Florida with Greenwald and Associates, where we took a look at students who are enrolled in a CTE program in Florida. So in Florida they have something called the CAPE legislation, and this legislation set up small career technical education academies within high schools in Florida. And what they did in the study was they took a look at students who were not enrolled in a CAPE or CTE program versus students who were enrolled in a CAPE but did not have a certification at the end of their program. And then the final column is students who were enrolled in CAPE and took a certification such as the Adobe Certified Associate at the end of their program. And you can see that on all of the performance indicators that matter to high school teachers and high school administrators, growth was seen when students were enrolled in the CAPE academies and got the certification at the end. This is not whether or not they earned the certification, this is whether there was a certification required at the end. So some of the CAPE programs, there's no certification, some there are. So you can see that the GPA went up for students who had the opportunity to certify. You can see that the absenteeism went down. You can see that the graduation rate went up. So this is really exciting data that tells us as long as students are enrolled in a program where they're connecting the dots between what they're doing in class with what they could be after school, it's actually keeping them in the classroom and getting the kind of behavior that we all want to see out of our learners every day. Not only that, the students have incredible success stories that they can share that help build their creative confidence and help them think of themselves as creative thinkers. These are some students from an Adobe Education Leaders classroom in Massachusetts. She asked them, what does your ACA say about you? All of these students earned their ACA in Dreamweaver, which is a web design program. And you can see that the young man in the front says it means that I am the man. This gentleman says it means that I'm legendary, hardworking, and organized. You can see students are taking a lot of personal pride in the fact that they've earned this certification. Here are two students from Florida. These students were showing how they became Adobe certified, and rather than just stopping their college readiness path there, they actually went on to enroll in institutions. So the young man, Adam, enrolled in SCAD, which is a great design school, and the woman, Tina, on my right, I suppose on your left, got into the University of Florida. So certification is not necessarily an ending point, instead a jumping off point for young people on their career path. We did a survey recently where we asked students and educators what the value of the ACA is to them. And students told us that the verification of the skill level was really important to them, that it's an independent verification that someone has the skill. You can go into a job and say you know Photoshop, or you can say I'm certified, and that gives you an extra leg up. Students said that it displays their strength and knowledge and makes them feel proud. And for educators who've earned the certification, they said it was important because it adds credibility to them and to their skill set. So certification is a way to help students stand out on the career and college path and a way to motivate them to stay involved in the curriculum, as well as giving them an opportunity to be creative. So what I wanted to talk about here towards the last few minutes is just how you can get involved if you're interested in becoming part of the ACA program. So we're running a special promotion right now. I think in your folder you have a little card about this. It's called Make Your Mark, and basically what it is a website. If you go and enter your information, Certiport, which is the organization that administers the ACA for us, Certiport is going to send you a free test voucher so that you yourself can take the test for free. They're also going to send you a free practice exam so that you can practice before you go in. They're going to send you a free 90-day subscription to an online training library where you can study. And they're also going to give you a free upgrade so that you can get that ACA Educator certification tacked on once you pass the test. So it's a great deal. It's a great way for you to figure out if this certification is something that would work for your students or not, and for you to add to your own credentials and your own portfolio as an educator. Another thing I wanted to talk about, what we're going to be looking to do in the next few months at Adobe, is to start creating a student community for young people who've earned the certification, where they can get special benefits from Adobe as part of earning their certification. So discounts, ability to be in beta tests, things like that. So that's going to be launching soon. It's something to think about as you're thinking about whether or not it's a value add for your students to be involved. They will be invited to be part of this community. And then the last opportunity I wanted to talk about was a worldwide championship that we're hosting this summer in Washington, D.C. Anyone who takes and passes the Photoshop exam between now and I think May 15th is going to be automatically entered into this championship. And the top students from around the world are going to come to Washington, D.C. and participate in a design competition where they'll have to create something in Photoshop. And there are cash prizes and software prizes for that. So something to think about if you are interested in maybe getting a few students certified this spring, they'll have an opportunity to participate in that. And So I wanted to just give the last few minutes to Rod Masuda, who's here from Certiport in the back. He brought you the sunglasses. I hope you're excited about them. Rod joins us from Certiport. He's the Director of Sales for North America, and he can talk a little bit about how to get started with the ACA if you're interested.
Thanks, Melissa. Hey, guys. It's all about jobs. That's what I'm going to talk about. You all are creative people, and everybody here talks about creativity, which is fantastic. We'll get back to that in a second, but it really is all about jobs, okay, on everything you do. And raise your hand if you've seen the movie Avatar. Raise your hand if you know about the movie Avatar, okay? It's made $2 billion, and they talk all the time about how much Adobe software was involved in the making of Avatar. You need to tell your kids that. Photoshop is not just cutting out faces and putting them on animals. I mean, it's used in big Hollywood productions. It is, okay? So you have to tell them. You can't just teach them, but you have to let them know what's out there. Can everybody go work with James Cameron? Sure, why not? Get creative, right? So let me tell you a little bit about what I always do. Whenever I do some presentations, I always land and I run some monster jobs. You saw Melissa showed thousands of jobs on job boards. Well, let's get real specific for just 1 second. I ran it for Flash. There were 258 jobs for requiring Flash skills right now in California. I do California because I wanted to go up and down the coast, right? California's, you have a lot of people making moves. If you just type in Adobe, you tell your kids to do that in Monster, there's over 300 jobs, 306 jobs that require, 342 jobs that require Adobe skills, 306 that require Photoshop skills, 203 that require video editing. They have to get creative in how they put words they put in the job search as well, okay? So video editing, digital photography, multimedia, all of that, graphic design. Speaking of graphic design and digital media, the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently published a report indicating that job growth in digital media will be double-digit increases every year between now and 2018. All right? So that's healthy. You guys, oh, really 15% increase? It's a healthy business to be in anyway. You're going to hear about cloud, that we're going to have 500% increase in cloud. Well, there's 8 jobs for cloud right now, okay? There are a lot of digital media jobs out there, and it's growing 15 to 18% every year until 2018. So you tell your kids that what they're learning now will help them get jobs. Now, why Certify? Because Certify makes you stand out. You saw that certification. And so this is the official Adobe certification. I can't pronounce his name, Narayan. Okay. President of Adobe Systems signs the certification. All right. These are the real deal. There are a lot of certificates of completion. There are a lot of people that say they have maybe a state assessment, but this is the real thing. This is the same exam that's delivered here in San Francisco, as in New York, as in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Tokyo, Japan. All right. We've translated these exams into 152 languages. 152 countries in 27 languages. Okay, so these are international exams, great credentials, helps your kids get jobs, right? And it's easy to get certified as instructors because Adobe has made it free for you, right? Okay, so look at the Make Your Mark. We'll be very happy to get you some free certification vouchers and some study materials. It's easy to get your kids certified in the setup, because it's free to set yourself up as a testing center. You want to certify your kids in the same labs where you're teaching them, right? Because the certification is difficult in itself. You don't want to make them go somewhere else. They're not going to do it, or they're going to be nervous. So reduce the anxiety. Make sure that they take the exam on the same computer where you're teaching them. Okay, so we can set you up for that. And you're going to be real excited to see what kind of pass rates you can have. I want to give you a couple of success stories in just 1 minute here. Houston Community College, they're doing hundreds of Adobe certifications, ACA, because they want all of their students to leave with an associate's degree and certifications, okay, because they want their kids to be competitive. We've talked about this a little bit here. Dropout rates in the first year of post-secondary education, whether it's community college or university, is at all-time high, all right? So you can either ignore that or you can embrace it, because people drop out for real reasons, family reasons, financial, whatever. But what happens, a lot of our instructors are telling me what they're doing is they're forcing their first-year kids to get certified in anything, because then they've at least had 1 year post-secondary education and a couple of 2 or 3 Adobe certifications. They're going to be able to get a better job when they leave you. They're going to come back and finish their education because of that experience. I'm telling you this, these are from instructors that are telling me this. St. Louis Community College is implementing Adobe certifications, and the reason is not only do they want their kids to leave with Adobe certifications to stand out, but it attracts more students. Okay? It helps enrollment when you offer certification programs. And finally, certifications, you know, you've heard a lot these last couple of days about critical thinking, soft skills, all of that. Okay? Well, implementing a certification program that's legitimate, that's difficult, like Adobe ACA, that's industry standard, will elevate the bar in your classrooms, will force your kids to be more creative, you know that, will force your kids to collaborate, will force your kids to think outside the box. That's exactly what Florida has told us. That Florida study, the Cape study that Melissa showed you, there's a reason kids keep going to school is because they're more engaged when they're in a certification program. You need to tell them that. You need to force it on your kids because it forces them to be more creative, more engaged. One Florida school told me that vandalism went down in the lab. Before they were implementing Adobe certification, kids were popping letters out of the keys and everything, and now vandalism, because they were using the lab for what it was meant for, right? Sorry about my passion, but I'm big into certification, big into Adobe certification. It is the most recognized that's out there, right? Any questions on maybe how to get started? You've got my business card there. You can give me a call. I'll introduce you to your California rep. Her name is Frances Stewart. She's fantastic. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a sister who was in video editing for Channel 2 for 19 years, and she wants to get back into that field. What would she have to do to get certified? Does she have to pay for it, basically? Or?
That's right. These certifications are not for free for the general public.
Can you do it through EDD or something like that? Or?
If you Google Adobe Certified Marketplace, there's lots of options there for purchasing vouchers to get certified.
That's right. That's right.
And we actually only have 1 minute, so what I'll do is I'll close, and then Jeff and myself and Rod will be here for a little bit to also answer additional questions that you have. So if you remember at the beginning, I talked about Adobe's commitment to creativity as an elective, or as an imperative, not an elective for some. And when we started out, we talked about our own experiences with creativity. And I hope that this session has helped you see a little bit how technology tools can help empower and unleash creativity. So at Adobe, we're offering the tool. We're offering the certification, but we're also offering professional development. So we have this great new website that we've launched called adobeforacademics.com. And it has tons of tool training on there where you can learn how to use Adobe's tools, but they're all couched in real-life things that you would want to do as a higher ed or a K-12 faculty member. So there are things like creating your own professional headshot for your LinkedIn, or creating an interactive syllabus, or recording your lectures and things like that. So you can learn how to do these things on adobeforacademics.com. We also have a new professional development platform that will be launching in February, but in the meantime, you can use the bit.ly that I have down here, adobe.ly. That is case sensitive, to see a list of all the materials that will be on this new platform that launches. And if you go ahead and become a member of the Adobe Education Exchange today, just go to Adobe Education, I think it's edexchange.adobe.com, or you can just Google it. If you join that, when the new platform launches, you'll get an email and you'll be able to see the amazing, beautiful new platform that I'm very excited about. And it has all the information for you there, all the training, all the tool training, all the professional development you need. The Adobe Education Exchange is also where our curriculum is, the year-long curriculum, and all of the user-generated curriculum that are created by educators just like Jeff to help you in your classrooms. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is Adobe TV, tv.adobe.com. This is where you can get tons of great videos on how to use the software both in your classroom and your professional life. Jeff talked about Adobe Youth Voices. They also have a website called the Adobe Youth Voices Essentials, which has other curriculum where you can learn to do what Jeff did in his classroom. So I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you for playing with us in the Creativity Circle and for listening today. This is my contact information as well as Rod and Jeff. Happy to answer any questions you have, and have a lovely weekend.